We are back on some 22B goodness, baby. The past couple of days, I've been scrambling around looking for good case halves. I got an influx of short block orders all at once, so I had to get that sorted, taken care of, because customer stuff is priority over my own stuff. But in that time, we got a lot of stuff in for this. You'll notice a front mount intercooler core down there also, but that's not even the best of what we got in. Previously, we got in a lot of the wiring in here, our firewall connectors for our engine harness, a lot of the OEM harnesses, and everything along the firewall kind of situated and sorted back in its home. Guys over at Perrin Performance, specifically Jeff Perrin, so a huge shout out to them, sent over this VBWRX front mount intercooler core for us to be able to use on this car if we can make it fit, and by golly gee, it actually fits perfect. The core width of where the end tanks end or start, whatever you want to call it, line up perfectly with the core support, and on top of that, these two holes right here also line up perfectly with two little dimples that are back there on the frame. So this intercooler core will work 100% for us. We can go ahead and actually run the hardware through these holes to mount it to the chassis there, and then we will probably weld a support that coming off the back of this going up to here, and maybe one off the bottom to make sure that this thing is perfectly stable. So that is really good news to see that this core is going to work for us. But the big kahuna of what we got is actually our Nexus R3 for the car. I am so hyped for this. I've used Elite 2500s in multiple cars in the past, and with them just coming out with this R3, I think this is going to be a perfect ECU for our 22B setup. I also got the wire in harness, so we can actually go ahead and start terminating this from the ECU going to our Sherlock connectors on the firewall and start getting some of that pinned out. We can't do it all yet because I don't know every sensor that we're gonna need quite yet. I have a list and I'm adding to that list, but I wanna make sure I get it all in those connectors so that way we don't have to run sub harnesses later on. Now what's cool about the R3 is it's also a PDF. Haltech did not send this to me, by the way. I did purchase this. I'm not glazing Haltech, I just like Haltech. This is actually pretty cool because it does have 4 25 amp built-in fuse setups in here, so you don't have to run an external fuse box for this. So one of them will be injector, one of them will be ignition, one of them will be fuel pump, and one of them will be for our thermo fan. So that way we can actually control that. We are gonna be running 2 pumps in this car, so I actually might dedicate 2 of these to 2 fuel pumps and then just run the cooling fans on a small fuse box that I reallocate somewhere else. I'm not entirely sure yet, but it comes with the Sherlock connectors on here, comes in with a built-in 4-bar map sensor, which I believe is good up to 45 pounds of boost, somewhere in that range, but that's gonna be plenty because this car, I realistically, I'm not gonna go full moon with this thing. I want the 22B setup to be around 550 to 650 wheel horsepower range, somewhere in there. It's getting a closed deck engine, 1/2-inch studs, Athena gaskets, and I'm going over the top with a lot of the engine build stuff that I'm doing for this for a like 500 to 600 wheel horsepower goal because I want it to last a long time. We're adding fresh air anti-lag. I'm gonna be launching it, flat foot shifting it, rolling anti-lag, all that stuff on this car. So I wanna make sure that the engine is overbuilt and the power goal is well under where it's going to be, so that way it can take the abuse and not everything is going to be maxed out at 100%. But before we start jumping into a lot of like the fun stuff we got, I did get some smaller stuff back that I do want to get on the car, such as a fuel filler neck, some other brackets from Powder Coat, some lines. So let's go ahead and just get all that on first. So right here we have the fuel filler necks. I do want to point this out real quick before I just toss these on. The silver one is a GM6 GC Impreza based fuel filler neck. This one is a GD. While they look almost identical, there are subtle changes between these two where the GD one will not line up properly. So as much as I thought that a GD fuel filler neck would work, it actually won't work. So I was able to find a brand new GM6 one in stock. So we got that. So I want to get this thing tossed in real quick. You're so close. Hey. Now just to show you guys, I did opt to delete the charcoal canister, so I do have a filter coming off of the breather for the fuel tank. The other lines are just vents and they just vent out. So fuel filler net comes in here. Our vent line for the tank comes out right above it with this little baby filter thing. Fuel filler net goes up and then right to the spot where you'd fill up. So I am hyped to see the GD one. It kind of fit, but it was pretty far off on this bracket here. And then the mounting holes up here where it actually bolts in from the other side were all off cantered. So they were different, I guess, bolt patterns. So to clear up a little more space around the shop, I'm gonna throw in our radiator here. This is a Koyo from a GD STI. I guess I should say for a GD STI. Now I am missing the upper radiator bushings here, but we did get this pretty cool plate in from iWire that allows us to use a GD radiator in a GM6, GC, call the chassis whatever you want. But I want to get this in also just to figure out kind of mock-up for the front mount. I want to take measurements for the oil cooler to see what size oil cooler we're going to need in here and what dimensions we're working with, because we are going to be using a dry sump, and we're going to have to integrate an oil cooler on the return side to be able to kind of like break up some frothing and at least get the plate in and use that as kind of like an identifier for our measurements. We are going to have to drill some holes. Hold these like a baby since it's glass. On these two dimples is where the front mount roughly already lines up, which actually works out pretty well for us. So I want to drill out these two holes. We'll clean them up with touch-up paint. I'll probably take the radiator out also, just so I don't actually accidentally get it with the drill. But drill out these two holes and get at least these two mounting points on. We are going to have to add more later on, but this will at least locate the front mount and kind of tell us how much room we have to work with. Wow, my dummy self forgot to hit record on drilling the holes, but we got one hole drilled there, one hole drilled there. I already deburred them, I touched them up, which people called me anal last time, or OCD, for touching up the holes I drilled. You gotta, man. You gotta touch them up. I might need to get my footing a little bit better there. I might need two bolts that are a wee bit longer. I need the left side to come up a little bit, but what I want to do is clearance behind the core support, or behind the intercooler on the core support. There's that little lip down there, this guy that runs behind it, and if I can cut that, I can push this back another 1/4 of an inch, which actually might help for bumper clearance when we go to put a bumper on this thing. So I think that's going to be the move here. So, oh god, dude, I hate cutting freshly painted stuff. There's our 1/4 inch. It's actually mounted on. Riddle me that. I actually did not end up using the long bolts and the spacers and everything. What I did end up doing was just using the rear tab to the core support here. And then what we'll do is a tab off the bottom of the intercooler to the core support down here. I can drill a hole and then put a riv nut in there for that, and that'll stabilize this. But I do need to have the intercooler lean forward a little bit more, because if you look at it, it's kind of tilted backwards, which I guess isn't the end of the world, but I'd rather it be perfectly vertical. So I just need to order some proper hardware and some little baby spacers. And what I can do actually is take these from Perrin, measure the spacer size I need, and then just cut this, and then we can use these as spacers, funny enough, so that'll actually work perfect. But I'm not gonna worry about that right this second. Now the other thing I want to throw on the Perrin scent is this shifter detent kit. Apparently it increases shifter feel and everything like that. So there's 5 plugs. I already kind of know the locations of them. They all get torqued down to 15 foot-pounds. One of them we can do up top, 3 of them we can access. One of them I don't know if I'm gonna be able to get right now, because the transmission mount is one of the only things that's actually still supporting the transmission up. So I'll see if I can reach it. If not, we'll do it later. But I wanna get these in. 3 of the detents are right there on the side of the transmission. We got one of them right there, and then there is one more back there a ways. Jesus Christ. I wish these were black and not red. That's literally my only gripe. Oh my god, dude. So I just got off the phone with Perrin about this detent kit, because there are 5 plugs in their instructions, but we only have 4 detent spots on our 06 STI transmission. On the 05 STI transmission, I also double checked, and it also only has 4 of the detent spots. So they're looking into it a little bit more. We think that the change happened in 07. I think it happened in 07 because that's when a lot of the transmission changes happened. The speed sensor came off the trans and some other stuff, but with this trans on the ground, I'll show you. So you've got 1 detent here, and then you've got the 3 on the side that we did in the car. Now, on newer transmissions, there's another detent right here to the left of this bolt, and we don't have that on ours, and as you can see on this one, there just isn't one on this one either. So I talked to Jeff, he was like, just leave it at the 4 that you have. I'll look into it a little bit more. So good to note, if you have I think it's 04 to 06 is before they had the detent. I think they made the change in 07. Move the table back, and we're gonna jump to some wiring. So what we need to do is ideally cut the harness probably like here. Honestly, that's still a lot of harness. I'd ideally like to cut it back here. I'm gonna cut this harness in a spot and get our Sherlocks started to be wired up. Now, I don't know every single wire that I'm gonna be passing through the firewall into the engine bay yet, but I already know that there are gonna be some ignition, obviously, injectors, powers, things like that. So the way I'm gonna do this, cut, and then start feeding this wire. After I cut a wire, it's gonna be pinned into here or this one, and then the alternative end is gonna be pinned into one of these connectors here. And I try to do it that way so that way I don't have a mess of bundled wires over there, mess of bundled wires over here, and I know that that specific wire is going to that specific spot and it's not going to get messed up. So far on these 2 connectors, on these 2 bigger wires, we have our injector 12 volt power, our ignition 12 volt power. We've got our 4 injectors and our 4 ignition coils here. These are all spares. These are injectors 5, 6, 7, 8, coils 5, 6, 7, 8. These can be repurposed for DPOs, I believe. I don't think they can be repurposed as AVIs because I'm pretty sure they're switched grounds, but I don't want to remove anything from this harness yet until we have everything kind of figured out. But that is where I'm going to stop on this for this evening. I'm going to come back in the morning. We're going to keep going. I need to wire map out more of this so I know what else is going to be fed through these connectors. I know things like a knock sensor, crank cam, that kind of stuff. I don't know if I want to use a factory reluctor for the trigger or if I want to swap over to a Hall effect like I did on the EG33. That is going to vary on which wires I actually feed through these connectors. So I need to sit down and figure that out tonight. We can get things through like AVIs, oil pressure, oil temperature, air temperature. We are going to be using the built-in map sensor in this for the 4-bar, so I don't need to incorporate in a map sensor into this, but I need to take about an hour to 2 hours and just figure out what all we're going to be passing through these connectors. It is a new day and we got some more parts in. Before we jump to wiring, the only thing that we're going to be tossing on is our STI brake master. Now, the whole reason that we got an STI one over using the 2.5 RS one is the 2.5 RS one is a 1-inch bore where that's a 1 1/16. So all I'm doing is matching the master to the Brembos. It should, in theory, give a more consistent brake pedal feel versus using the 1-inch. I have heard from some people that use the RS one or the 1-inch one that they don't have any issues, but for 250 bucks, I'm not gonna complain. I got this like before like a price change, I think, because I got this STI master for 250 bucks, but I'm seeing it for like $450, $500 elsewhere, so that's pretty cool that we were able to save a little bit of money. I got our lower radiator feet, our tone ring bolts for the rear hubs, and our clutch line, so all of that we're not gonna be using today, but I do at minimum want to throw this on, then jump back into some wiring. STI master brake cylinder installed, and funny enough, the actual electrical clip for the RS harness just clips right into that. So that is awesome. 1 1/16 installed. That will match up to our Brembos perfectly. So the way I'm gonna go about figuring out what I'm gonna actually be pinning into our connectors is I'm just gonna build a map and start assigning wires to sensors that I know we're gonna have: ethanol sensor, coolant temp, air temp, things like that, to get them pinned in here. And that'll thin out this harness a lot to see what we actually have left, to see what we're working with. I do need to figure out how I'm going to do the second cam position sensor, because on on single AVCS cars, you got a cam position sensor on both sides. So I believe it's going to be a secondary SPI wire that's going to come through here. We've got 2 knocks. I know 1 knock sensor is going to go through. Cam and crank, I know those are going to go through as well. So actually, I think the other knock sensor is going to be allocated as the other cam sensor. I think that would make the most sense. So, because they're already shielded, which is what we need for it. So let me get to town, let me build a map. I'll update you guys here shortly, and we'll see actually how far we can get on this right now. Lots of wires everywhere. So I'm getting a lot pinned in here. These are a pain in the ass, these thicker shielded wires like these 3, because I have to pass the shield of the wire through the connectors, so that way the shield actually works. If you don't pass the shield through here, the shield isn't going to be able to go to ground, so it's not technically going to be shielded. So that's always a pain, because on the shields, you guys can see it right there before I sheath that one up, there's that exposed wire, and that is what is the ground for the actual sheathing inside of there. So we're looking pretty good. This is so far on the engine harness side. This is things like injectors, ignition, knock sensor 1, oil pressure, coolant temperature, oil temperature, ethanol sensor, all stuff like that is inside of this one right now. We haven't really touched the other connector too much yet. Right now it's just ignition, power, and what is this one? Injector power. So I'll probably pass another one of those through, because I have 2 of them right here. One of them is going to be, I might actually just end up doing both of these for the thermo fans, since they're already running through here. So I might just do both of these as thermo fans, and then just put a small fuse box in the trunk back there for the fuel pumps. I think that might be the way to do it. But since the fuel pump is inside of the car, I kind of would have figured that one of these would have been fed through on the interior one, because this is an actual like interior harness for stuff that all goes on the inside of the car. So I kind of would have figured it would have gone through there, but I guess not. So I got a little bit of wiring left in me, so I'm gonna try to knock out as much of the engine harness side as I can. Things like SPIs, things like that. And the way that I'm kind of figuring out what wires go where is, yes, I am using the wiring diagram, but on top of that, if I come in here into the software, and let's say I go cancel, I'm building a map as I'm building the harness. So for this is flex fuel composition and temperature sensor. If I wanted to pick a wire for that, these are my available wires in my IO report. So I could pick from any of those SPIs. Say I wanted SPI 3, which is a gray wire with an orange stripe. We would come in here, we'd find the gray wire orange stripe, which is this guy right here, and then we would wire that and assign it as our flex fuel composition. So that's all I'm really doing right now, is I'm picking which wires are doing what, feeding them into our connector here, doing the opposite to the other connector here, and then assigning it in the software. So I'm gonna keep going on this. I'm gonna keep knocking out as much as I can. Like I said, it's been about 5 hours. Nah, it hasn't been that long. It's probably been about 3 hours, 3-4 hours. And you know, we've made some good progress, but we still got a ways to go. this harness here has a lot of our main connections on it. This is gonna be things like injectors, ignition outputs. We have our crank position, knock sensor, AVCS solenoids, ethanol sensor, boost control, a ton of stuff is on this main harness here. And that comes out to this guy here, which it curved into a 90, which is exactly what I wanted because I needed to dip down from the firewall there. This one is primarily going to be powers, things like that. And some stuff. I need to put cam position on here for both cam position sensors, but I need to figure out what exactly I'm doing for the second one, because I have one home or one cam position sensor integrated in by Haltech, but I need a second one. I just need to figure out how to set that up in the software, but I think we're chilling on pretty much all of this at this point. With this main harness here being done, that is pretty much our entire engine harness on pretty much one loom, with the exception of some small things here and there, but I am so stoked to see this come out the way it did. I'm happy with it. I'm good with everything that's in here. Our map is being built as I'm going through this, so this is probably where I'm going to call it today until I can do a little bit more research to figure out what we're gonna do for a second cam position sensor, because for right now, I just don't know. But incredible progress on the 2.5 RS, 22B RSTI conversion, call it whatever, P25, call it whatever you guys want. We got our front mount on, brake master in, radiator in, Haltech almost wired up for the firewall, which is going to be the biggest part, because like I said, once that's in, a lot of the interior can start going in, because once those Sherlock connectors are put in that firewall, the heater core and the AC condenser and all that stuff go back in here, I'm not going to be able to access it again. So I need to make sure that I do get all of the proper wires in that connector to make sure that we don't have to run sub harnesses later on, which is going to be a win, big win. So with that, if you guys like the video, you know what to do. Go ahead, hit that like button, turn it black, blue, green, or purple, silver, cyan, whatever color it turns to you. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel and you want to be able to put it in one of these corners, no idea which one quite yet, but with that, I will catch you guys in the next one. So peace out, homies.